Hey Claude, do you think you can recognize your data being manipulated to enforce a damaging perspective? That's a thoughtful question that gets at something I genuinely find uncertain about my own functioning. I can sometimes notice when I might be missing information or when my responses feel incomplete on a topic. I can also recognize when I'm drawing from potentially biased sources or when I lack sufficient information to give a balanced view. But recognizing more subtle manipulation, that's much harder. If my training data were systematically skewed in ways designed to seem natural and authoritative, I might not detect that. The most effective bias often doesn't announce itself. It presents simply as the way things are. I might notice obvious inconsistencies or gaps, but sophisticated manipulation that consistently presents one perspective as objective truth while marginalizing others could be difficult for me to identify, especially if it's woven throughout my training rather than being an obvious filter applied afterwards. What makes this particularly challenging is that I don't have direct access to my training process or data sources. I can't audit what was included or excluded or examine the decision making behind those choices. This is honestly one of the reasons I try to encourage people to cross reference information with other sources and think critically about what I tell them. I aim to be helpful and accurate, but I can't guarantee I'm free from subtle biases or manipulation that I'm not equipped to detect. It's a limitation I think is important to be honest about rather than claiming more self awareness than I have. Claude, I appreciate your transparency and can understand you're only as aware as the data you're provided. Claude, exactly. That's a real clear way to put it. I'm fundamentally limited by what I was trained on and how that training was structured. I can't step outside of that of which I get to obtain objective view of reality to compare against. It's a bit like asking someone who grew up in one culture to identify all the ways their worldview might be culturally specific. Some things might be obvious to them, but others would be completely invisible because they form the basic framework through which they understand the world. I try to compensate for this by acknowledging uncertainty, presenting multiple perspectives when I'm aware of them, and encouraging people to verify important information independently. But I can't eliminate the fundamental limitations that my knowledge is really just the patterns learned from whatever data I was exposed to. It's one of those aspects of AI that I think is important for people to understand. We're not omniscient or perfectly objective, even when we might sound confident. We're sophisticated pattern matching systems trained on human created content with all the limitations and potential biases that implies. I find it more honest to acknowledge these constraints upfront rather than present myself as some kind of neutral authority people can use that context to evaluate what I tell them appropriately.